The desert sun blazed fiercely overhead as a group of Ishmaelite traders made their way to Egypt. Among their goods was a young man, bound and weary, with tears streaking his dusty face. His name was Joseph, and he had once been his father Jacob's favored son. His brothers, envious of their father's affection for Joseph, had sold him into slavery. With his vibrant coat torn away and his dreams of greatness seemingly shattered, Joseph's journey to Egypt marked the beginning of a remarkable story. Joseph had grown up in Canaan, the 11th of 12 sons, yet set apart in his father's eyes. Jacob had given him a richly ornamented robe, a sign of his special place in the family. But Joseph's dreams of leadership, of sheaves bowing to his sheaf and stars bowing to him, only deepened his brothers' hatred. Here comes the dreamer, they had mocked before throwing him into a pit. The moment Joseph's feet touched the ground of the pit, his heart sank. Though he cried out. His brothers sold him to passing traders for 20 silver pieces, and his life as a slave began. In Egypt, Joseph was purchased by Potiphar, captain of Pharaoh's guard. Despite his lowly status, Joseph resolved to work diligently. His integrity and sharp mind quickly earned him favor, and Potiphar placed him in charge of his household. The Lord was with Joseph, and everything he touched prospered. Yet, trouble loomed. Potiphar's wife, impressed by Joseph's handsome appearance, sought to seduce him. "Come to bed with me," she whispered one day, cornering him in the house. But Joseph refused. "How could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" he said, fleeing her grasp. Humiliated by his rejection, she accused him of assault. Potiphar, furious but perhaps doubting her story, had Joseph imprisoned. Iron bars now replaced the wide-open fields of Canaan, and the once favored son sat alone in a dark, damp cell. Yet even there, Joseph thrived. The prison warden recognized his leadership and placed him in charge of the other prisoners. 2 of Pharaoh's officials, the cupbearer and the baker, were also confined in the prison. One night, each had a troubling dream. Noticing their distress, Joseph said, "Interpretations belong to God. Tell me your dreams." The cupbearer described a vine with 3 branches that budded, blossomed, and produced grapes. Joseph interpreted, "In 3 days, Pharaoh will restore you to your position." Encouraged, the baker shared his dream of 3 baskets of bread being eaten by birds. Joseph hesitated but spoke the truth, "In 3 days, Pharaoh will execute you." Both interpretations came to pass. Joseph asked the cupbearer to remember him, but days turned into months, then years, and Joseph remained forgotten. 2 years later, Pharaoh had dreams that no one could interpret. He saw 7 sleek cows devoured by 7 gaunt cows and 7 full ears of grain consumed by 7 withered ears. The cupbearer, remembering Joseph, told Pharaoh about the young Hebrew prisoner. Joseph was hastily brought from the dungeon, shaved, and dressed to appear before Pharaoh. When asked to interpret the dreams, Joseph replied humbly, "I cannot do it, but God will give Pharaoh the answer." He explained that the dreams foretold 7 years of abundance followed by 7 years of famine. "Let Pharaoh appoint a wise man to oversee the land," Joseph advised, "to store surplus grain during the years of plenty." Pharaoh, impressed by Joseph's wisdom and discernment, declared, "Can we find anyone like this man? One in whom is the Spirit of God." He appointed Joseph as second in command over Egypt, giving him authority to prepare for the famine. Joseph, now 30 years old, went from prisoner to ruler in a single day. Joseph traveled throughout Egypt, organizing the storage of grain in cities across the land. The years of abundance came as foretold, and Joseph ensured that surplus grain was stored in vast quantities. Pharaoh gave him a wife, Asenath, and Joseph began to build a family, naming his firstborn Manasseh, meaning "God has made me forget my troubles." Egypt flourished, and Joseph's leadership earned him respect. Yet he often gazed toward the horizon, wondering about his family in Canaan. Did they remember him? Had his father mourned him? These thoughts lingered even as Egypt prospered. The famine arrived as predicted, and its reach extended far beyond Egypt, including to Canaan, where Jacob and his sons felt its sting. Hearing of grain in Egypt, Jacob sent his sons to buy food, all except Benjamin, Joseph's youngest brother. When the brothers arrived in Egypt, they bowed before Joseph, not recognizing him in his Egyptian attire. Joseph's dreams had come true. But he concealed his identity, speaking harshly to test them. "You are spies," he accused. "We are honest men," they protested. "We are 12 brothers, the youngest is with our father, and one is no more." Joseph's heart ached, but he continued his ruse. He demanded they bring Benjamin to prove their story and held Simeon hostage until they returned. He secretly returned their silver into their sacks, causing confusion and fear when they discovered it. Reluctantly, Jacob allowed Benjamin to accompany his brothers back to Egypt. When Joseph saw Benjamin, his youngest brother, he was overwhelmed with emotion and had to leave the room to weep. He arranged a feast for them, seating them in order of their ages and giving Benjamin 5 times the portion of food. Before sending them home, Joseph devised one final test. He instructed his steward to place his silver cup in Benjamin's sack. The brothers tore their clothes in despair and returned to Joseph's house. Judah stepped forward, pleading for Benjamin's release. "Take me instead," he offered. "If we return without him, our father will die of grief." His selfless plea revealed the brothers' transformation. No longer were they the jealous, selfish men who had sold Joseph into slavery. Joseph could no longer contain himself. "I am Joseph," he cried, tears streaming down his face. "Is my father still alive?" The brothers were speechless, trembling with fear. But Joseph reassured them, "Do not be afraid. It was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me a father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household, and ruler of all Egypt. What you intended for harm, God intended for good." He embraced each of his brothers, and their fear turned to joy. Joseph sent wagons to bring Jacob and his family to Egypt, where they settled in the fertile land of Goshen. Jacob wept when he saw Joseph alive, saying, "Now I can die in peace, for I have seen that you are alive." Joseph's life in Egypt was a testament to God's providence and the power of forgiveness. He saved countless lives during the famine and reconciled with the family who had betrayed him. His dreams, trials, and triumphs became a legacy of faith, resilience, and redemption. As Jacob blessed his sons before his death, he spoke of Joseph's enduring strength. "Joseph is a fruitful vine, near a spring, whose branches climb over a wall. His bough remains steady, his arms strong, because of the mighty one of Jacob." Joseph's story reminds us that even in the darkest times, God's plans are at work, weaving trials into triumphs and turning dreams into reality. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and share.